Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing the May monthly wrap-up. So I have StoryGraph pulled up here. So for our stat for this month, I read 16 books. And as I talked about in the last wrap-up, the pages is not accurate, so I'm not going to say that, but my average time to finish is 2 days. And I read mostly adventurous books with some emotional, hopeful, tense, and mysterious, lighthearted, and dark. And then we get into sad, one inspiring, one informative, and one funny. I read mostly medium pace books, as usual. I read 56% for medium, read 38% fast, and 6% slow. And then I mostly read books that were between 300 and 499 pages. 69% were that. And then less than 300 pages was 25%, and then 500 plus pages was 6%. And then completely fiction, I'm trying to start reading, maybe thinking about picking up a nonfiction book in June. This month, I actually surprisingly read more middle grade books than I did young adult. So I read 11 middle grade books. I read 6 young adult, 5 science fiction, 5 fantasy, 3 historical fiction, 2 dystopian, 1 magical realism, and 1 contemporary. Average rating is 3.73 stars. The first book I read this month was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. So this book follows Jude, and her parents were killed when she was 7. And her and her 2 sisters were taken away to live in the High Court of Fairy. 10 years later, Jude really wants to belong there, but many of the Fae despise humans, especially Prince Riordan, the youngest and cruelest of the High King. To win a place at the court, Jude must defy him and face the consequences. This was good. I gave this 4.25 stars, and I'm excited to read the next 2 books in this series. The second book I read this month was Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This book follows Citra and Rowan, and they're chosen to apprentice the Scythe. Basically, so in this world, there's no hunger, no disease, no war, no misery. Humanity has conquered everything, even death. So now Scythes are the only one who can end life, and they're commanded to do so in order to keep the size of the population under control. So then Citra and Rowan are chosen to apprentice a Scythe, and they don't want to do that because they must master the art of taking a life. So then they have to compete because something comes up, and it's really interesting. Definitely towards the end of the book is when everything starts happening, but I did this 4 stars. The next book I read was Dress Coded by Terry Firestone. This book follows Molly, and she is annoyed because her school has such strict dress code rules for the girls. So she makes a podcast and starts speaking out and gets a bunch of girls who have been dress coded unfairly to come in as guests and speak about their experiences. So then it starts leading up to when they start protesting and going to school board meetings for the dress code to change. This was actually good. I finished this really fast. I did this 4.5 stars. The 4th book I read this month was All the Impossible Things by Lindsay Lackey. This book I saw for DNF, I think a year ago. This was on my monthly TBR for last month, but I did not get to it just because I was not excited for it. The ending was slow, and until probably the halfway mark, it didn't really get exciting, I would say. But it follows Red, and basically she can control the wind, because whenever she's angry or scared, the wind picks up. And so she's in foster care, moving from family to family because her mom is in jail. So then Red lands into the home of the Groves, a couple who run a petting zoo. So then something happens and she has to trust her new family. I give this 3.25 stars, and just because the first half was a little slow for my taste. And then I've read Specials by Scott Westerfeld. This book I wasn't really looking forward to after reading Pretty's, you can't see it was off screen, but Pretty's is right here, 2.75 stars. But this book is the third book in the Utley series. It's the second to last one. Extras is the last one, and that is on my June monthly TBR. I'm not really going to say what this is about because it does spoil the first book. But I gave this 3 stars. It's not my favorite, but it was a little bit better than the Pretties. Then I read The Wild Robot Escapes by Peter Brown. By the point I read this, I had already had it for a few months, and I wanted to get it off my shelf because I got in the third book in the last book in the trilogy the day that I started this. So I read this. I finished this in a day because the text is big and there's also illustrations. I did half a page and even sometimes full pages. But I gave this 4 stars. So basically, Roz works on a farm now and she escapes to go back to her son Brightville. It was 4 stars and it was actually pretty good. So then the next book I read was The Wild Robot Protects, the final book in the trilogy. This book happens, so Roz and the animals on the island are like, their life is perfect. But then an animal informs them that there are dangerous waters that are flowing towards the island. So it's poisonous tides. So they take a terrible toll on the island, and Roz has to adventure out to discover the source of this cause. And I gave this 3.5 stars. This wasn't as good as the first 2, because it felt a little different, I'm going to say, than the first 2, but it was still pretty good. The 8th book I read this month was Reflection by Elizabeth Lynn. This is part of the Twisted Tales series, so retellings or what if Disney princesses, Disney characters, I guess. This is what if Mulan had to travel to the underworld. So basically it's a classic story of Mulan. So she's in the army posing as a man under the fake name Pink. But then the captain of her army group, Li Xing, takes a blow that was meant for her. And she felt like she has to do something to help that. So she travels to the underworld and makes a deal with the leader that if she can do this, then he can come back. This was good. This is so far my favorite in the series. I read 4 of them. I gave this 4.25 stars. The next book I read was Pharmacy Girl by Kate Zedda. This book is a historical fiction book. It follows Josie, and she really does not like this one guy named Billy Detweiler. But basically, this follows the Spanish flu, the Great War, and then she has to find out the truth about Billy Detweiler. And it was pretty good. It actually kind of surprised me, but it's really big, but also the text is big as well, and there are lots of pauses, especially in the beginning of the book. Let's see if I can open up to a page that has them. So there's just lots of pauses like that, and on some pages there's more. I did this 3.75 stars. And then, being on my historical fiction little kick for a little bit, I read Stella by Starlight by Sharon M. Draper. Sharon M. Draper wrote the Out of My Mind trilogy, and I liked that. So I picked this up, and this actually was pretty good. I rated it 3.5 stars, but it follows Stella, and she lives in Bumblebee, North Carolina, so in the segregated South. And so it just follows her life. So one time she sees something that she's not meant to see, and everything changes for her. This was pretty good. The 11th book I read in May was The Last Contessa by Donna Barba Hijura. This book follows Petra, and she wants to be a storyteller like her abuelito, but her world is ending. Earth has been destroyed by a comet, and only a few hundred scientists and their children have been chosen to journey to a new planet, so she is among those people. Hundreds of years later, Petra wakes up on the ship by the new planet and discovers that she's the only one who can remember Earth. A sinister collective has taken over the ship during its journey and erased humanity's past. They have purged the memories of all aboard, or just purged them altogether. So now Petra alone carries the stories of the past, and with them any hope for her future. Can she make them live again? This was pretty good. So up until the ending, it was pretty good. The ending was not my favorite, and that lowered my rating by a whole star. I don't think the next book in the series follows Petra. And that's kind of frustrating but I did this 3.25 stars. And then I wanted to get back into my comfort genre after just kind of outside of that for a few books, and I read The Extremely Inconvenient Adventures of Bront Meadowstone. This is a fantasy book. And so she's 10 years old when she gets the news that her parents have been killed by pirates. So she used to travel to a bunch of different kingdoms and give gifts left by her parents to various different aunts. As she travels from aunt to aunt, she starts to realize that there may be more to the journey that she is taking than a simple delivery of treasure and like a big risk that she is taking. It was pretty good. This surprised me for a middle grade book about this. Some parts you could tell it was middle grade. It was kind of cheesy some parts. I gave this 3.75 stars, so overall pretty good. The next book I read was a book that I just wanted to read because I, for a long time, just haven't been really looking forward to it. So I picked up Josie Bloom and the Emergency of Life by Susan Hill Lond. The book follows Josie, and she starts discovering wads of money left around the house by her grandpa. So then that money comes in handy when she starts finding unpaid bills, like bills. So then Grandpa is spending more time feeding the squirrels than actually paying the bills. So then a bill arrives that's too big for her to handle, and she has to find a plan to get more money. That is really only the first of the book, and then the last 3 quarters kind of something else. I was not really expecting. I was expecting it to be more of a mystery, but it turned out to be more of realistic fiction. So I gave this 3.25 stars. And then by this point, nearing the very end of May, I read my highest rated book, 4.75 stars, and that was Pennsylvania by Stephanie Watson. Surprisingly, this did. But follows Zora, and she loves to draw until her mom dies, and so she gets sick, dies. So then Zora just does not want to draw anymore. So then Zora starts scribbling out her artwork, and her sister Frankie are yanked into this town called Pennsylvania, a world that is home to everything Zora has ever drawn. So then a scribbled out horse named Viscardi is determined to finish the destruction Zora has started. So then Viscardi kidnaps Frankie, her sister, and she has to go to find his lair and rescue her. This was actually really good, so 4.75 stars, and this got me into drawing again. Here are some pictures of stuff I drew, but yeah. And then I also finished a series this month. I was planning on filming a video, but I was reading a little too slowly, and by the time that I was supposed to have it out, I've only read a book. So I finished the Book Wonder series. So I read The Last Book Wonders by Anna James. This is part of the Pages & Co. series. So basically this is just the final thing where they have to try to defeat alchemists. Everybody's working together. They travel into Norse and Greek mythology. So that was pretty cool. And I gave this 3.75 stars. Then I read another historical fiction book, and that was Lisa's War by Carol Modas, and this is a very thin one, and it was very fast-paced because of how short it was. But the Nazis have invaded Denmark, and Lisa and her family really want to put up a fight. So then Lisa has to prevent sending all the Jews to concentration camps. So that's that. And it was only 108 pages, so it was very fast. I finished this in a night, and I gave this 3 stars. Now for the question you guys are probably all wondering, how much of my May TBR did I read? Now this month, like always, I had 8 books on my monthly TBR, and I read 6 of them, so that's actually pretty good. 2 I did not read. The ones that felt were Something to Say, and The Stork Trials is actually, if you watched my June monthly TBR, it's actually on my June monthly TBR. I was gonna read this, but then just read the first few pages and just wasn't really clicking for me, so I put it down to pick up something else. I would say that was a fairly successful reading month in terms of my TBR. Okay, I want to thank you guys for watching, and make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to stay tuned for next week's video. Goodbye!